This past week, four Franciscans and I, we went on a hike. And when I looked at the map, I estimated that the hike was going to be 10 kilometers and it was going to take us about 3 hours. And so we were leaving the car at 10 o'clock, which means we would return by about 1. So we left our lunches in the cooler in the car and thought we would have our lunches when we arrived back. But my estimation was a little bit off because the hike ended up being close to 17 kilometers and it took us 6 hours to complete. And we were quite hungry. And so when we got back to the car, we were very delighted to share in the food that we had brought. What a blessing food is. One friar always says, thank God we can eat. Now, in the first reading from the book of Proverbs, wisdom is inviting us to a meal. Wisdom wants us to feast on wisdom. And this is rooted in a commitment to God. We commit ourselves to God so that we can be guided by God's wisdom. And it's foolishness if we don't have God as our guide, because how do we get through life? Well, we're probably either dictated by our bank accounts, maybe our jobs, or we're dictated by the culture. And sometimes the culture is not very life-giving, whereas the wisdom of God will always guide us in ways that are life-giving and loving and kind to ourselves and to others. Now, in the second reading, the letter to the Ephesians, we are to make the most of each and every day. We can't really determine how long we're going to live, but we can make the most of each day. And there are times when we can offer goodness to others, and we all probably know when we've hit a limit of doing something that's totally wasteful, or else when we know that we could be doing something a little better with our time. And so we have to make choices to make the best use of our time. And may we be guided by God in this, and may we continue to allow our prayer lives to guide us in our lives, ultimately to allow God to guide us where we can share God's goodness with others. Now, in the gospel reading, as a Jewish person, you would have thought that Jesus is foolish, he's gone mad, he's crazy to say what he says. He's inviting the people to eat his flesh and to drink his blood. Now, this sounds first like cannibalism, and then it also is something that's forbidden, to drink blood. But we have to look at this text from the perspective of God. And it kind of ties in with our psalm, taste and see that the Lord is good. Taste God. Taste the body and blood of Christ, and know that God is with you. This points to the incarnation, God becoming flesh and pitching his tent among us. And God continuously wants to become flesh in our lives and pitch his tent with us. Of course, we have to participate, we have to cooperate with God's presence. And this is guided by Lady Wisdom. And then the second perspective is that this message is coming from a Trinitarian God. In other words, a God who wants to commune with us. And, I would say that both the incarnation and our Trinitarian God reveals to us that God is not way out beyond the clouds in a place we call heaven, and sort of throwing us graces, but God is intimately present with us. And this is really what we share when we come to the table of the Eucharist. And so as we gather around the table of the Lord, once again, we gather to be nourished, but we also gather to identify who we are. We are what we eat. In other words, we are the body of Christ, and we are meant to bring life and goodness to others. And so let us taste and see that the Lord is good, so that we can bring this goodness into our world.